Hi, everybody. This is our first tape lecture, and so you can pause, start, stop, rewind anytime you want. And like I said in class, that this will be a streamed broadcast, but if you want to do the download, I will send you the Dropbox link, and you just have to create a Dropbox account to be able to do that. This lecture is not going to be a very long lecture. What I want to kind of talk about, we in the prior lecture we talked about, what organization managers are, and a lot of times organization managers, the goal is we hope that all of our healthcare professionals are leaders, but I kind of want you to reflect during this lecture about, what are your good, strong leadership skills? How do they differ from management skills? And how we can possibly improve on them as we grow in our management roles, whatever company we're at right now or where we currently hope to be in the future. Before I get into the lecture, I'll review this at the end of the lecture too, but the assignment that I do want you to do is some of the material from this lecture comes from chapter 16, but in this tape lecture, I'm not going to go into detail all the different leadership styles, leadership, theories. A lot of that I want you to read, and I do have discussion questions that come from chapter 16 that actually help really more focus on and reflect on you as a leader. Will be posting on the course web 2 short articles on leadership. They're very short articles from 2 different publications. One is about the difference between a leader and a manager. Another article talks about the difference between leadership and followers, and I do mention a little bit briefly here in the lecture. Another one I also have is Scott Barnett, who actually is the founder and CEO of Bubblegum Shrimp, and he does a great lecture. It's not a TED lecture, but it's a great lecture that he gave a couple years ago about the leadership versus management and how they're not the same. And I think it's a very good reflective video to take a look at. So please, between now and the next time we have class, look at that. The only thing that you actually have to upload will be the discussion questions. And I know that, next week's Memorial Day weekend. So this isn't due until the Thursday before the next class, which would be June 1st. Okay, so let's talk about what is leadership. All right, if you Google, you go on Amazon, you go on anywhere, you're going to sell. There's a wealth of literature out there that exists related to leadership and leadership theories. And so that's why I refer you more to reading chapter 16. I'm sure in any of your organizations, you've attended talks in the past about leadership. But what I hope to out of this lecture is just begin to doing a self-reflection of, what are leadership qualities, and then also what are leadership qualities that we need as we are growing in our roles as leaders and managers in our healthcare organizations that we work at. All right. Because the one key thing to remember is there's numerous types of leadership, but one style of leadership does not work. All right. And you don't really want to say, I'm going to mimic myself. I'm going to lead like Steve Jobs, or I'm going to lead like Lee Iacocca did from Chrysler, or Jeff Bezos from Amazon. Your leadership style you may take some of those principles that you read about different leaders, but you want your leadership style that is a reflection of you. You don't want to be someone you're not. You want to be someone you feel comfortable. Now, you may evolve, we all do, in how we are early on in our careers and how we become as a leader. But once again, you want that evolution to make sure that becomes a part of you. And that's why we do these reflective papers, is it gives you a time to do some interlooking of how can I improve. When we look at the definition of leadership, and we look at it as a manager, that a manager's job is to plan, organize, and coordinate. We talked about in the prior lecture about how operation managers, their ultimate goal is to carry out the mission and the vision of the company that is set by the executive team, the executive leaders, and form those action steps. It doesn't mean an operation manager can't be a leader, but what a leader is their job is to inspire and motivate. And obviously, the better an operation manager is in their leadership skills, the better they'll able to also carry out their plan, organization, and coordination skills. Peter Drucker, who's a famous business manager, researcher from the 70s and 80s, also talks about, and this is a reflection of our industry, is that we're dealing with knowledge workers. We deal with our pharmacists. We deal with our trained technicians. And you've heard me say this before, and you've probably heard this other places. One does not manage people. The task is to lead people. And the goal is by leading people is to make productive specific strengths and knowledge of every individual. We're going to talk a little bit later in this lecture about that team approach. And our leadership is the ability to influence others with or without authority. And like I said, you can have a pharmacy tech who is your lead tech and maybe not has a managerial responsibilities, but they can be a leader. Sometimes they lead by example. They can handle a crisis when things have to be changed. But when you look at all the successful endeavors, all right, the ability to influence other is, derived from our communication skills, how we can handle conflict management, and how we are good at problem solving. And not all people are good at that. The one article I provided, the difference between a leader and a follower, please take a look at it. It's not, both articles that I post are not very long articles, but they are very good articles when you're thinking about looking at down the road of hiring people, training people, and making your team for you. So the question you need to ask yourself is, are you a leader or a follower? All of you taking this course fall into, the leader category, and I just knowing you a brief period of time, I would assume that because you are taking the initiative that you want to better yourself. You see that your vision is to be a manager to help the organizations you work in. Just a couple quotes about leader or follower. This comes from John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, and become more, you are a leader. And so think to yourself, what qualities do you possess now? What qualities would you like to improve on that you find yourself able to do those things with the people that you are in charge of? Leaders would rather make a decision and be wrong than suffer the paralysis of indecision. Often we have to make tough decisions. Sometimes those decisions may not always please everybody, but at the same time, we have to look at what is the best decision for the overall good of the organization and for the patients that our organization takes care of. True leaders keep pushing forward even when there's no carrot dangling in front of them. Obviously, one thing is that, being, a manager, being, in an executive position, there is higher compensation most often. There is possible bonus plans. However, what usually drives a leader is that they push themselves no matter what. Runners run not because they're waiting to get to the finish line. Runners run because they enjoy running. And the other thing to remember is a leader is only as good as he or she can go through other people. Years ago, and now that I think about it, it'll be 20 years this July, that I did my residency in geriatrics. And I remember the very first day there, the head of the geriatric department, who was a physician and a pretty known physician, his name was Harvey Cohen. And Harvey looked at all of us in the room that day, and there was a collection of multiple different types of residents. There were pharmacy residents, there were physicians doing fellowships in geriatrics, there was actually a social worker residency, there was a fellowship in geriatric nursing, even geriatric dentistry, and even, I believe, another one in healthcare policy. And he looked at all of us and he said that The goal of our healthcare team is to take care of that geriatric patient. And I am only as good, even though I am the physician, as the team members that are around me. And like I said, it'll be 20 years this July that I remember hearing that. And I think about that every day, that we are only as good as the team we build around us and the team that we train around us. Sometimes we are, not always maybe in charge of who we get. Maybe we're not part of the hiring process, but we may be part of that. We're in charge of leading those people. Once again, as you reflect, are you a leader or a follower? Do you go above and beyond? Are you confident? Are you optimistic? Are you decisive? Are you accountable? Are you unflappable, that when you know the job needs to be done, that you're not going to get distracted and go off on a tangent, that you're going to be able to stay on task? Are you humble? Are you passionate? Are you motivated from within? Do you focus more on titles than worrying about what's the best for the company? Are you focused on people? And are we always willing to learn something new? And I think another one is, are we always willing to understand when maybe we might be wrong? And those are all good qualities of leaders. Do we always possess those at every moment in time? No. Do we always have room to improve on these different areas? Yes. But as you go through, your transition, and as you are going through this curriculum, what are the steps that are taking you to become more of a leader than a follower? The other thing for effective leadership is interpersonal effectiveness is the capability of an individual to do this, to influence others competently. And so how do we get to that point? Well, the way we get to that is possibly by three elements: awareness, ability, and commitment. So it's a triangle. To be effective, we always have to think about those three qualities: awareness, ability, and commitment. Awareness. It's obviously, by definition, it's a state of consciousness. It's the ability to recognize yourself and other events and situations in real time. And sometimes some people are just a natural at this. Some people, it takes skills of being able to have the ability to assess the impact of actions and situations and to figure out what is the consequence. Either if we're looking at it retrospectively, or we're looking at, if we make this decision, what will it impact the patient, the provider, the employees, the organization. It's a developmental process that is a function of, obviously, the more experience we develop, the better we become aware of this, the better communicating. As we know, communication is probably the key. The old thing is, don't always assume. We know, how assume is spelled, and, relaying that. And then the other one is also self-discovery and willing to take feedback. I heard you guys talk about focus groups, and being able to take that feedback and learn from that. I think that is so important in terms of awareness. The other is ability. All right. An ability is something that we progress all through our careers. It's to learn and understand technical issues is the basis of our careers. Obviously, the more that we can learn about how healthcare works, how organizational structures work, how, what future healthcare policy might be, it improves our ability to lead. And ability, because the more we can learn this, the better we are able to communicate. The more knowledge we possess, the better we can use that knowledge to resolve conflicts. And also, the more knowledge we have, that gives us the ability to solve problems and make decisions. And so, one of the things you need to reflect too is, how are you a self-learner? How do you learn about, what's going on in different industries? One thing that's nice in today's world, there's numerous ways to get that, whether it's through Twitter feeds, whether it's through RS feeds, whether it's belonging to different organizations, but there's different ways that we can learn, whether it's going through, curriculums like this, getting, your graduate degree, whether it's going through other credentialing. The ability to learn these things allows us to take then these skills and to teach and to teach others. And then being a member of that team, we can influence others and collaborate, to find better ideas to solve problems. The other one is commitment. Obviously, all of you have commitment. You would not be here wanting to sacrifice your Fridays and Saturdays for the next year here, that you believe that learning and developing these future skills are going to help you, not just yourself personally, but for the organizations that you work for. And for leaders, the one thing that leads to maturity is the full aware recognition that one's decisions makes a difference both positively and negatively in the lives of others. And then any attempt to solve a problem might have a decided negative impact on some while helping others. We always go for that win-win scenario, all right? But sometimes leaders have to make hard decisions. Leaders are transformational, that they have to look at. And that's why I had you write that first paper of how does your decisions affect patients, providers, your organization, your employees, but your commitment to being able to be self-aware to make those decisions allows you to be an effective leader. There's always assumptions of leadership, and there's too many to put on just to one slide. And there's numerous more that are mentioned in chapter 16. But, is leadership a learned behavior? I believe there are some that are natural leaders. They possess those skills. But a good leader also is learned behavior. There are many people that possess great leadership, but unless they have that commitment, that awareness, they may have the ability to lead, but unless they have that awareness and commitment, they're not effective leaders. So leadership can be teachable. Leadership can occur at all levels of organization. And wanting to recognize that you are a leader. I know myself early in my career, I don't think I looked at myself initially as a leader. I think I looked at myself a lot of times mainly maybe as a follower. However, I did not realize that I was a leader. There's numerous times in undergrad that I volunteered to be in charge of things. And sometimes I think I did it just because that's what I should do. But as I matured through my career, accepting and realizing, no, I am a leader, I do have an impact, is important, because leadership also is how we act, how we behave, how others perceive us. There's that old saying that, we perceive ourselves by our intentions, but other people perceive us by our actions. Does a leader have to be charismatic personality? Not necessarily. Some people that are charismatic can actually be very poor leaders. Some leaders can be very quiet. Some leaders can be very loud. And leadership, like all of your skills, is something that develops over life. You improve upon it. You learn from it. You may make subtle changes as you go. And so we always have to think about that. When we think about the attributes of a leader, we have to think about effective leaders know what they want to do and have the strength of character to pursue their objectives in the face of opposition in spite of failures. And this is where that commitment, this is where that you are being able to make hard decisions when they're not always there. The other thing is your passion. Effective leaders believe passionately about their goals. They have a positive outlook on who they are, and leaders love what they do. They love what they do. It's, that's one thing that I do enjoy about pharmacy. This is what I try to instill upon people that I work with in pharmacy, that this is a profession, and a profession is a 24-hour commitment. There are times, yes, we take our personal time, we take our time. If not, we'd go crazy. But a leader is someone, they enjoy what they do. all right? And their passion to guiding others to reach a goal is what makes them effective leaders. And like I said, this is not something that always happens overnight. It may take time. A leader also has integrity because they know who they are. Effective leaders are also aware of their weaknesses. And the other thing is, and this is a hard one early on in our younger career, is that sometimes we think that we can take on the world and we can make promises that we make the promises that we can follow through on. There are many times I can look back in my younger career where I made commitments because I just figured, yes, I can do that, I can do that. And sometimes, yeah, I did most of them, but sometimes I don't know if I did them as well as I could have because maybe I overcommitted. You know, the other thing is leaders are honest. Sometimes brutal honesty hurts, but sometimes brutal honesty is what people need to hear. And there are effective ways to communicate that brutal honesty that gets your point across. And so, honesty is something that goes along with that because by being honest, then you develop that trust. And when that trust is earned from those who follow you, that they are more than willing to act on your behalf and also maybe instill some of those leadership qualities into them that follow you. Leaders are also always curious, all right? We're learners. We always wonder about every aspect of the change. We're not always satisfied with the goal. We want to reach the goal, but maybe once we reach that goal, we always have to reflect, how can we improve upon that goal? What is our next biggest challenge? What can we do to improve the organization? Leaders also are not afraid of risk, all right? But at the same time, leaders, because if they can possess the ability and awareness, can calculate, you know, good effective risks to achieve their objectives. And if a mistake is made, a leader can step back, take a look at, and think about, what did I do wrong? Or what did we not maybe do effectively? And what other avenues can we go down to make the success of that goal? And obviously, as I said before about commitment, there's that dedication that they will work on behalf of those following them. The leader gives him or herself entirely to the task of what is necessary, and that dedication goes along with that. I talked about, do you need to be charismatic? And not necessarily, but I think that depending on how you do it, everybody has a different way of relaying that. But I think if you can develop that trust and respect from those who follow you or those that you lead, that cares, you develop your own personal charisma. Everybody has different styles. Everybody has, it'd be a boring world if we were all the same. But how do you portray your communication skills to those that you want to carry out? What do you hope to achieve? And a lot of times, the best way to do that is listening. Leaders listen. They listen to what is coming back from those they are in charge of. Sometimes it may not be always what we want to hear, and sometimes people may be hesitant to tell you that. Sometimes you have to share with, if somebody does tell you something that they're wrong, how can you portray to them that, I hear what you're saying, but we're going to take a look at it from another angle. And so, but listening is a key one, because good leaders do take that into account. And if you don't, that is where an organization can begin to crumble. The other thing, though, leaders do, especially in our healthcare world, and it's very hard, especially for, as we talked about earlier in the course, about having pharmacists recognize that they are managers, that they need to have some management skills, but pharmacists need to recognize that they are leaders. They are leaders to their patients. They are leaders to possible other healthcare workers. Okay. And so trying to instill upon that is very important as we are, part of an executive team or a pharmacy manager. All right. Because leadership skills in our healthcare professionals is necessary for the advancement of healthcare, for the improvement of patient outcomes. And there's numerous opportunities, as you are well aware, for pharmacists to be leaders. So let's look at leader versus manager. All right. So leader, versus manager is obviously a leader is a person who's followed by others. A manager. What is a manager? A person controlling or administering a business or part of a business. A person regarded in terms of skill in household or financial or other management. We talked about operation managers carrying out that vision, but leading people, giving them that ability to see that this goal is important is what a leader is. Using those management skills to allow them to do the various activities to get that goal and making sure those activities are appropriate and they are smart to be measurable, that is the management skills. And like I said, leadership is the ability to develop that vision that motivates others to move passion towards a common goal. Obviously, management seeks stability and predictability. That's how we reflect. I said the other day, success is doing the common things uncommonly well. And so to be able to prevent med errors in a pharmacy, there are certain steps we need to make sure that are being managed to prevent regulatory, issues, that, could be affect the company. There is managerial steps to get there. But making sure that we improve patient satisfaction, healthcare professional satisfaction with our company, that takes leadership skills. Leaders do the right thing, managers do things right. So you think about the management part of what you need to be as a leader, those are making sure that those activities are being laid out. Here's a difference between some of the differences. Obviously, somebody can be both a leader and a manager. All right. Management, we talked about those various activities in the operation management lecture: scheduling, staffing, activity analysis, project controls, financial analysis. Leadership is communicating these management necessaries, motivating if we have to make a big change in the way we do our processes, handling when that change can be stressful, developing that team when we want to make a change, and then obviously being able to recognize that we can make change. This is just a listing of the following attributes that we all look in managers, all right, and things that they do very well. Developing a schedule, decision steps. And when we look at managers, these are all activity steps. And we already talked about this in operation management. But I think one of the things I want to talk about here in the last part of this lecture is about coaching. And coaching our employees, our team, to realize the difference between being a manager and a leader, because the ultimate goal, the more people we can have help lead the goal, the motivation to get to the goal, the better we are. If you want to get ahead and be a leader, you must assume that everything that happens to you results in a situation that is in your control. There are sometimes in our industry that are uncontrollable. Shortage of a drug, by a manufacturer, changes in healthcare policy. But our control is, how do we lead when those changes occur? That attitude you convey is what you're judged on. And you are what you think and believe if you're going to be a leader. That what you think and do in your private life is what you'll reap in your public or corporate life. And so a lot of times too, taking down, writing out what are your core principles, your core beliefs. How do you feel that your beliefs relate to the organization of the company that you work with? If you never meet a challenge, if you think that every day is going to be the same, it's going to be easy, then you're not going to be a good leader. If you accept the fact that every day is going to meet a new challenge, And looking at that new challenge with positivity allows us to be a good leader. And so, some recipes for being a leader. Obviously, these are not all inclusive. Having a control of your life. How well do you organize your own life will be a reflection of how well you can organize the leadership, responsibilities you have in your organization. Assume responsibility of who you are. Think of the word responsibility. It is how you respond to the different situations that happen every day in our life, whether personal or our job. Conveying a positive and dynamic attitude in everything you do, which is not always easy. All right. We are all human and things happen. Accept blame. Be able to learn from our own mistakes as well as those of others, and take blame for everything that happens in your unit. If somebody fails in your unit, yes, it might have been their cause, but where did we fail as leaders that we didn't do well enough to coach them? Make sure we give credit where credit is due to the people that we work with, and be compassionate when you review your team members' progress or lack thereof. Think great thoughts. Think big thoughts. Small thinking is why some companies go broke. I always use this analogy. A good physician. If you ever remember going on clinical rounds when you were in pharmacy school, if you did a clinical rotation, and you watch a doctor trying to make a diagnosis. A great doctor will see a patient, listen to some of the symptoms, and may come up with 6 possibilities. A not so good doctor may only come up with 2 possibilities, and you'll say, well, they narrowed it down to the 2. Well, the other doctor thought big. There's 6 possibilities. And then what do? They go down the different avenues, where they order lab tests or diagnostics tests to be precise that is the right condition. So when you're thinking, what do we need to do different in our company? Think big, and then do that maybe SWOT analysis of what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of this new endeavor. Turn disasters into opportunities. Turn every obstacle into a personal triumph. So as healthcare is changing, as reimbursements are coming small, what is the better opportunity we can do for our organization? Determine your real goals and then strive to achieve them. When you want to tell someone something important, do it personally. Think about the different various ways we have in communication: texts, emails, meeting with that person in person, making sure that person knows how much you care, or how much they mean to this company. And if they're doing something wrong, meeting with them personally also shows how much you care, that you want to bring out what are those mistakes and how are we going to improve on them. And like I said, sometimes too, don't be afraid to get our hands dirty doing what you ask others to do. If you want somebody to do it, sometimes show and teach and let them do it. I said as earlier in these slides, listen effectively, encourage teamwork, make sound and timely decisions, and protect your team. Know them and who they are. There's lots of different styles of leadership. In fact, when you read chapter 16, why I refer you to chapter 16 is there's lots of different theories, different principles, styles that I could, share with you. But like I said, instead of boring with you and just with slides, I'd like you to read it, and then we'll kind of talk about that when you do the discussion questions when we meet back on Friday, June 3rd. But there's all different type of styles. Behavioral-wise, some people are more autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire. But probably the most effective type of leadership we can have in healthcare and in organizations where we have knowledge workers is transformational leadership. And what is transformational leadership? It's a style of leadership where a leader works with subordinates to identify needed change. It's where you create a vision to guide that change and to execute that change with the team approach. And like I said, this is used more often to implement innovation and change within a profession, and is probably the type of leadership healthcare needs now and into the future. So, if we think about transformational leadership, it's about building a team. And so, why do we rather go by the team approach? Having a good team, all right, is you have different members providing input. And that, if you look about the organizations you work for, you do have teams, all right, already. It allows you to learn new skills from each other, to give contributions to help meet the goal in mind. And when a team is operating well, the leader and the members, we can meet those goals. When we work as a team, everybody feels ownership for the problem rather than blaming others. When we work as a team, people are more willing to share ideas, listen and show respect for each other, and then talk more about we and less about I. Building a team understands and uses each other's know-how, knows, more about each other's personal life, gives each other help and support, recognize and deal with differences and disagreements. And building a team provides more loyalty to the team, its members, and ultimately the organization. Building a team helps, that we make decisions based on facts. And so sharing, different numbers that you can share, metrics that is not based on emotions or personalities. And sometimes role playing within the team allows people to improve, whether they serve as a leader, a teacher, or a coach. So that leads to two. One of the things is being a leader of a team, we have to think about how do we coach that team. Obviously, if you think classically of a coach from a sports-like perspective, the coach is the person who is to take those team people and make sure that you come up with your principles, your mission, and your vision, and that everybody's contributing and realizing what is their role as a team to meet that ultimate goal. So when we think about coaching, it is an opportunity to help someone expand his or her skills. Coaching is a chance to help someone enhance his or her performance and then value to the team. Sometimes people may ask for coaching, but don't wait for that to happen. Sometimes we need to share with them and how do we communicate that we need to coach them. When we're getting ready to coach an employee, a member of the team, confirm that that person is ready for coaching. Do they possess the skills that they need so then we can coach? So if you think about a basketball player, you can coach them on how to do a certain play in a basketball game, but if they don't know the skills of how to dribble the ball, to play a defensive position, they're not going to be able to do that. So if they don't understand the different skills that require for them in the organization, coaching them to get to that goal, they may not be ready. Ask questions and offer information to help clarify the situation. Much of coaching is making sure people are understanding what they need to do. Often the way best to do this is asking open-ended questions that allowing them to provide input and, being questions with words like what, when, where, who, and how much. Help the person think through what you want them to do and identify possible actions. As you help someone identify immediate actions, you're also preparing that person to do their own critical thinking when maybe the plan doesn't always go as you planned. Also, by coaching, you're getting people to, accept agreement of what you want to get them to. In coaching, you'll help someone plan on how to handle a situation. To be certain that that session results in positive action, you need to gain that person's commitment to that specific plan of action. Obviously, too, offer your support that, if they run into troubles or need further assistance, making sure that you have that open door policy that they can contact you, they can reach out to you, and that they can develop their leadership and management skills as you go through that coaching. So when you think about your leadership strategy from a coaching standpoint, there's various different, stages, and there's very different strategies we may need to do. We have a newcomer in the company. We may need to provide more advisement. You know, we may need to provide more training. Whereas we get the ultimate goal in the stages is to get a team member who's interdependent, who can do a lot on their own, but they can facilitate that back. And the better we train people from a coaching standpoint as a team, the ultimate goal is they become more independent, able to meet the ultimate goal and mission and vision of the organization. And we're seeing that return on investment. Obviously, there's numerous leadership styles, I said before, from how well are we at delegating, how well are we supporting, coaching, and directing. And so as you read through chapter 16, think about those styles. Okay? So we kind of highlighted, the difference between leadership and management in this lecture, and some of these things you might have heard before. In fact, when you listen to the YouTube video by Scott Barnett, a lot of these principles will be brought back out. What I'd like you to do by June 1st is have watched my video with the PowerPoint, and if you did, you've already reading this, read chapter 16 and answer the discussion questions at the end of that chapter. And in the next slide, I have the questions listed out on the slide here too. Read 2 short articles on leadership and watch that YouTube video. And how we'll open up June 3rd is we'll go and look at these discussion questions. And these discussion questions are the following. What are the challenges to becoming a leader? What characteristics of an effective leader mentioned in this chapter or these readings do you currently possess? How might you acquire and improve on some others? What is the importance of developing insight into your personal leadership style? Which of the evaluated tools mentioned in this chapter do you feel might be the most benefit to you? As a leader, how do you help promote change within the profession and in your organization? How comfortable are you with delegating things to others? What are some factors that might keep you from delegating certain responsibilities? How might you improve these? So, I hope this lecture has been insightful for you to be able to think upon your leadership skills versus your management skills. And we'll kind of have an open discussion of this before the next lecture, when we begin the next lecture on Friday, June 3rd. Thank you for your time and have a good Memorial Day break, and I'll see you soon.